Login accepted.
Hey everyone, welcome to the tech capital of the world, coming to you from Main Street, Kernersville, North Carolina. Kevin, what do you think?
New place.
New place. We're not in the new studio yet. So.
Right. We're in your actual office still.
Yeah, I'm in my office still. So you have to get over here and help me do some stuff. So
we're going to finish up the studio space, but
yep.
We're here. I know we haven't been here for a minute. But if you follow us anywhere else, if you've followed us on Twitter or anything, you know we've been talking a lot about AI lately. If you follow the Not Null Podcast, or we did a Twitter space earlier in the week, we've been talking about AI a lot lately. We're going to kind of carry that on here today, but with a developer theme in mind.
Yeah, because there's a lot of fear out there. What should I do? Should I learn? Should I quit learning? There's people on the YouTube channel interacting with our videos, with, hey, ChatGPT-4's out. What are you going to do now? So
yeah.
Gotcha. So, people saying that it's the end of boot camps, the end of profession, the end of the profession, the end of humanity. It's like,
right. I say the end of developers, the end of jobs, the end of humanity. It's like, geez, like how far along this thing do you think we're going?
And you forgot that we're also going to be immortal at the same time. So we have to figure that out. Like, I don't know how we become immortal and the end of humanity all at the same, breath. But a lot of chatter out there. And what I want to do is just kind of cut through that. And I think give you a real educated take, my educated take, that I think is how this is really going to shake out. And it's not the end of humanity. We can just cut to the end if you want to turn it off there. I don't think this is going to end the world. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so what are some of the common questions we're getting? But before we get that, just to let you know, like, if you want to follow us on Twitter, follow us on, LinkedIn, maybe, hit us up on YouTube, subscribe this if you like it. The other thing that, if you want to ask us a question, hey, we haven't been here in a minute. We'll tell you the rules of the road. Tell them, Kevin, just ask a question, chat there. Just
post the question. Basically, as we're going along, if you have a question, you want to talk about something, throw it up in chat. Don't be shy. We're all friends here. We'll go through a bunch of questions. We'll have Q&A time today, so definitely. We'll try and keep it on topic as much as we can, but if you have questions about anything, throw them up there, and we'll get to as many as we can as we go along. If you want to guarantee we answer your question, you can super chat it. That's always gonna guarantee that we pull it up, but you definitely don't have to do that. But you can if you want.
Exactly.
I just want to say hey to some people. So because we haven't been here in a minute, so I thought we'd say hey. So Ryan's here. Hey Ryan, Bree is here. Good to see you back. Nemo's here. Let's see. We have greetings from Argentina, from Ulysses. That's cool. So yeah. And Brian's got it right here. A lot of fear mongering going on with AI. Definitely, which is weird. It's a strange thing. I get it. I guess I get it. It's it's an unknown, so we're always scared of things that are unknown that seem quite powerful. So
exactly.
Yeah. So the first thing, let's talk about, just to start off with, then, what's your take on? So initially, there's a kind of a narrative out there that developers no longer be needed, along with artists, musicians, painters, like basically any job that's like in the information sector is no longer needed. There's a narrative that that AI will basically take all of those jobs. What's your initial thought on that?
So I don't think it's going to do that. Number one, I don't think this is going to be the end of human work, but specifically, it's definitely not going to be the end of human jobs or dev jobs for that matter, because in everything throughout history, enhancements come along, improvements come along, technology is introduced, and it just creates more and more and more. I imagine that if you had influencers at the time when the car was coming out, it was the end of blacksmithing, and like horses will no longer be needed, and what happened is some of that did come true. Like, hey, some blacksmiths aren't around anymore, really, Yeah. But other jobs are created. But when it pertains to development, I think what we're ascribing to AI right now is more magic than it already has. So you see it generate a website,
right?
And you're like, oh, that's the end of coding. That's it.
Right.
But that's not what we really do for a living. We don't really make a simple joke website. So the OpenAI thing had came out as a demo, and everyone threw their ups in arms. He took a cocktail napkin and created a joke website, and everyone's like, "That's it. That's done. We're done. No boot camp for me. No, I don't need to learn to code. That's it. It can do everything."
Yep.
And it's really a joke of a website. I mean, it looked like it came from 1997. And in fact, if you'd asked me, his biggest achievement was inventing time travel to go back and get something that so, that was the bigger thing. That's so
I will say, like, as itself, like as a demonstration of, I can take this and I can create this thing. That's great. I think it's awesome. It did an amazing job. But what it didn't do, and what people attributed it to, then in their mind, they said, "Wow, he had a picture of a napkin on a picture of a website on a napkin. He took that and turned it into a website." What it actually made was a terrible looking web page. But what people heard was, "Oh man, he built an entire website that's like, he basically built Yahoo or Google on just like giving this thing a napkin." And they gave it way more power than it actually had. It didn't do that. It didn't create a website. It created a very simple web page, which I agree is impressive. But don't believe that it created a web application of any kind, because it didn't.
But we could have went to Theme Forest and got a better template than that one.
Well, we definitely could.
Yeah.
We definitely could.
So, like, here's what I don't like about the way this is being covered. People covered the cocktail napkin image, but not what it produced. They only showed, look what it built this thing from this this hand drawing from a cocktail napkin into a website. And they never showed the ending website. Why? Because people would have said, "Well, oh, that sucks. That's kind of lame." I mean, that's not, and it's not really a joke website. It is a website that you can push a button that has a joke in it. So a joke website, in my opinion, would have a database of jokes, maybe all of the Seinfeld library built in, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
So that's not really, or a dad joke website. There's 1,000 of those, and they're way better, than what this one generated. So, but also what people don't understand is even that thing that it produced in ChatGPT, you would have to then turn around and figure out how to publish that to Netlify or publish it somewhere. So there's some other inventions, some other integrations, some other things that have to happen for this to take place.
Well, here's the thing. It is in no way autonomous. By any shape or form, it is not autonomous at all. It is an interface that'll give you information back, which is great. It's a great way to retrieve information, because it pulls and gives you information within context, which is really great. But we've been we're in the process of making a separate video where we're going to put out a pre-produced video where we take this concept of, can I use AI alone to build a website? Turns out,
not really. In fact, what I'm doing is, because people think I'm going to sandbag it, I'm actually re-recording the parts I'm using ChatGPT based on the knowledge. I'm like, okay, let me make this thing look a little bit better.
But first pass, it was like rough, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's rough, and it's like, okay, so maybe I need to be a better prompter, and that's a fair criticism if you watch the video and it's like, oh, Bobby could prompt better. My point is, I don't think what they're saying is like anyone can build a website now.
Still not true.
False. It's not true.
No way.
There are people that I'll meet in life that are in my circle, and people I've met in business or whatever, and they can be in charge of sales teams. They can do some very high level positions. Yep. You couldn't give them Squarespace and they build a website.
Right.
Much less that we're going to give you ChatGPT, where you have to like integrate HTML into a site and then figure out how to push it to Netlify. Oh, by the way, you need to know how Git works, but whatever. So I think those are the things that people don't really understand. And we're talking about a singular web page.
Right.
We haven't even got into like,
it's not complex.
Let's get some models going. Let's get a database going. Let's connect up to 3 different APIs.
Yep.
Let's manage some JWT tokens. Oh, by the way, I might want to use a version of React or Angular. Let me pick which one I want. Can you figure out which version of Bootstrap to use? No. So there's all of these things, and then we get to hallucination, which is like, then it just flat out was wrong. Yeah. And if you don't know anything about coding, there's no way it's unsolvable. Like, so for example, one of the things it did, not to give away our whole video, is that it changed a class name, and suddenly the site broke. because it changed the naming convention it was using for classes. And just like, okay, that's easy for me to solve. I saw it right away when it was doing it. I'm like, you named that wrong, But for the novice, and I know this because we teach people how to code, that those nuances, those things that can happen when you misspell things and suddenly all your CSS breaks, they don't see them right away.
Yep.
And that's for people we're educating, we're teaching them. We're like, yeah, you got to pay attention to it's case sensitive, or, it's got a dash in it. Make sure you look for that. Those are the types of things that trip up new coders. And I can't imagine a sales manager, a guy with an idea is what they say, can build an app. It just isn't going to happen. Because that nuance it's always in the edge case. It's always in the details that kind of trip people up in coding. And that's why people either hate it or love this job. They don't want to look at it at that detail.
And we were trying to build something very simplistic too. We're trying to build a single, like a landing page, right, is what we're building. A single page with some information on it. No other interactivity on it. And even then, when you start, here's one of the giant problems with it. When you start iterating over it and you're using this tool for coding and you're figuring out this thing and you're reprompting it to like fix things that are wrong or say, hey, I don't like that. Can I change that? How do I do this? Like, it'll give you the answers. But the issue is that it doesn't have a consistent like idea throughout the whole thing. It'll change its
methodology.
It'll
change its
methodology. It'll change its approach just on a hat, like just on your next prompt. It'll use a totally different like method of solving the problem. And then it doesn't really look back at that and say, well, okay, I used that in the previous one, therefore I should do that again. No, it just solves the problem again in a very different way. And what you end up with is just really bad spaghetti code. It's just...
Right. And so what people were telling me is like, well, you need to train it up front. You need to tell it what its parameters are up front, and here's what I'm thinking the whole time. I'm just trying to build a web page. Like I have to give it all of these instructions in the front of, I could have just done it. And so when I look at it, I felt like I was like coding with one arm behind my back. In other words, I know how to build a web page. So like, let me just crank this out. I think I could have done it in 15 minutes versus the couple of hours I was yelling at ChatGPT, basically getting frustrated with it. I felt like, where Tony Stark is always yelling at the robot, like, you're useless, get out of here. What are you doing? If you spray me with that again, I'll donate you to a community college. That's what I felt like with ChatGPT. Like, I'm just going to like end my subscription if you don't write all these menu items out and tell me you're only going to write one. And I need
because that was the thing it kept doing. You had to keep like telling it to be like, when it refactored the code or whatever, it only give you part of the answer back again. You're like, no, give me the whole thing. I want to copy the whole thing back in again.
The point of this exercise, you're supposed to be coding this, not me.
Yeah.
So I felt really frustrated about it. And I do know this. I'm sure there's some chat coming in. I could prompt better. I understand that. But it becomes where you're writing a novel in this thing. And this is when I first saw this when the very first thing Copilot came out. And I'm like, do we want to write novels or do we want to write code? And is English language the best coding language that we can come up with? And while it seems easier, you still have to be as specific and you have to have the same attention to detail and the same thought of how the process works in order for you to achieve anything with this. It's very, very difficult to code with it if that's your only tool.
Yeah.
Now, I can see ChatGPT getting closer to the code editor, and once VS Code has the official plugin coming in, I'll try it out and see if the chatbot inside VS Code or inside Visual Studio is better. So I will be a subscriber to Copilot X, probably will. We'll see how good that actually is. I mean, so it is kind of strange though, and this is what people need to understand. Like, Microsoft in their wisdom has found a way to charge for VS Code now. VS Code's free, Copilot's $20 a month. And it's no longer are you going to buy the IDE, you're going to start paying for all these other kind of plugins that go in there, and they're going to monetize where you got to trick out your environment. Well, that's $20 a month, and that one's going to be $6 a month, and so there's going to be a lot of things.
This is kind of the video game model, isn't it? Fortnite's free, but everybody has their little everybody has the little skins you can buy in it or whatever. Right. It's like, you don't need it to be able to do it, but it's like it's nice to have. Like,
and
so
then
having AI is going to be nice.
So I think that's where coding's going to go. I think that right now, as it stands, you have to know how to code HTML and CSS if you want to build a web page. I don't care what tool you're using. You have to know a little bit about how to get it into Git. You're going to have to know how to publish it, however that is. Can it give you instructions? Yeah. But I can tell you, we've given out instructions to students sometimes in Netlify, and they still they still need us to say, okay, that didn't exactly look it right, or Netlify changed the UI a little bit. Now I'm confused. And so if for certain group of people, if the instructions aren't exactly spot on, and even if they're spot on, they'll skip over step 3 and just, and they don't understand what happened. And I'm not saying people are dumb. What I'm telling you is attention to detail, patience with the details, looking for these things is part of being a good developer. And like, we have to teach those skills in our bootcamp. And sometimes it's kind of be frustrating to certain people because they're used to like, I just push the button. Well, now we have to do a lot more work. So I think that coding is safe for the next, if you had to say, guarantee me something, decade. It's a decade away. It's not even close to what we need to do. Well, but I also have some other thoughts on this too, as you ask me more questions. So.
Yeah, well, I think the thing here is too, it's like like you putting a decade on it, for instance, is because it's not because. Okay, so my opinion, what we have right now, what we call AI right now, these large language model version of AI, doesn't necessarily lead to AGI or something that could take our jobs ultimately. This might not be the road. I'm not saying that will never happen, because I don't know about what will ever happen, but I'm saying this isn't the precursor to that. I don't think it is. No. Because fundamentally the way that it works, it's not intelligent. It's not. It's seemingly intelligent. So it's like, we've talked about this before, but it's like the sawing the woman in half kind of thing. It's like, if you look at it, you might be like, and if you know nothing about like the fact that it's a trick, you might be like, wow, that's magic. That looks like magic. It's complete magic. I have no idea how that happened. Same thing here. It's seemingly magic, but it's not. It's just two women in a box, right? It's
and one's legs are sticking out and one's body sticking out the other.
But it makes it look realistic. Exactly. But this makes it look like it's artificial intelligence in the fact that it's not really intelligent. It's seemingly intelligent. So don't attribute like intelligence to it, because it's not. And maybe LLMs will never get to that point of intelligence. So who knows if it's 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? Who knows if we ever even get there? I really don't know. I really don't know. So from what I'm hearing from you then is that currently using these tools, they still take skill, knowledge, understanding to be able to even use them. You can't give this to you can't give this to somebody who has no knowledge about building a website and say, hey, build a website. Right. Because even the prompts that you need to put in, you need to be educated about. The responses you get back, you certainly need to be educated about. You could spend days learning terminology through it, because it'll give you terminology that you have no idea about, like what that means. Right.
And you need to know like how to spot bugs in it, how to like do those things, and then you got to integrate it into a coding editor at this point, still to this day. So it's just not going to ever generate a code, something from a black box. And what I would say is, if you're out there and you're like, I don't know how to code, but I want to create a marketing AG and build, websites for gyms or something like that. And they're like, now ChatGPT is going to enable you to do that. And I'm like, no, Squarespace has been around. You could already do it with Squarespace. Get to the business of selling it. The tooling, CMSs, are vastly superior to what ChatGPT can do. It's not even a discussion how much better it is.
Oh, the landing page that we made using GPT, I could have made in under 5 minutes maybe even a minute on Squarespace.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it would have been better. And then we didn't even address things like responsiveness. Does it look good on mobile? No, it doesn't. Like it doesn't get there because you have to tell it to do those kind of things. And how do you explain that in English language? I need this to be responsive. Does the person know, like, okay, I want 1 column on mobile, 2 columns on tablet, 3 columns on desktop and above? I know that because I know that there's grid systems in there and that's how it works. But you have to understand that there's some guys out there, he's just sold websites and he doesn't know that they're in columns.
Right.
How do you describe that? Maybe he gets there, maybe he doesn't, and does he care that half of it's in CS Grid, the other half's in Flexbox, and then the other third's in Bootstrap?
He does when he has to fix it.
Yeah. So like, okay, like, how do I fix that? And then then he ends up hiring a developer to fix his startup idea and then they just end up rewriting it anyway. So like, it can lead to spaghetti.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think about so the other thing that's kind of floating around right now then is that because there'll be fewer jobs that because AI will assist people with helping this stuff, that there will be fewer jobs because of that, because what took 5 developers before will now just take 1.
Right. So like what they're throwing it out is they're using 10x as their rule. So they're saying that this will make me 10x more productive. Let's say for the sake of argument that I'm running a startup and I have 10 developers. All right. And we're building a product, and then suddenly ChatGPT comes around and that developer now can do all of the jobs of the other 10. All right. He's 10x'd. And people are saying, well, you're just going to fire the non-developers. I'm like, no, here's the limiting factor for every company that's in technology isn't that they want to fire 10 developers. They want to get 10x times more things done. They have a product roadmap that's long. They can't get to it because they can't do it faster. So what always happens is as productivity increases, we don't increase or decrease jobs. We just do more with that job. And it sounds like, well, you're just going to beat the whip on people. No, they're going to be there 40 hours a week anyway. So you might as well do more on the list of things I need to get done. And I've been in startups, man. We had a startup that we were in. We sold it in 2018. And we built the whole thing with 2 developers. Could we have done more with 6? Yeah. They didn't want to do that. You know, even though I partially owned part of the company, there was other people like, no, we don't want to like pay that much for engineering. So they invested more in marketing and sales. And we had 2 developers doing everything from rollouts to coding to everything. And that was the limiting factor in the company. It was like we had more product roadmap, but we can only get to so much because we only had 2. And you're probably saying, well, we could have 10x those with AI. You're like, yeah, maybe. The other limiting factor, and the people should laugh at this if you're a coder, isn't the coding part. It's the meeting part. Like, you know, it's the decisions. It's like the, you know, like making sure that we're not running off a cliff, you know, like, okay, well, is that a good idea or a bad idea? And so technology isn't the only thing to be considered. So what I think is if you 10x a development staff, the developer is 10x more productive. We're going to do more things in it, not less. We're not going to say, well, that's the product roadmap. You can do that. And that's all we needed to do. Check that off, roll it out. Let's make $1 billion. No, they're going to like look at what else can we build? What are the other things we can do? Because we have more developers. We're not going to have decreased developers. We're going to increase them. So the other thing that is a falsity in this argument is not everything can be 10x'd. You know, we used to say that in coding, like, you know, 10 people can't have a baby in a month, you know? So it's some things just take time because it's a one person job, even though it's lengthy. And so then there's knowledge and domain knowledge and all these other things that can be captured inside of people that some people don't have, and they necessarily can't do it. The other problem that I think I have with AI in general and spread that across teams is this whole thing of context. So each chat that you have has a context, and how do you share that context on a team so that we're all working in the same AI session? And that's a problem that
needs to be solved. Yeah,
that needs to be solved. Like I said, there's some inventions here that haven't happened yet that need to happen. The other problem is, even with the paid version, which I have, is it'll just stop responding when the request gets too long.
Yeah, especially with code, right? We noticed that. It gets to there's definitely a finite point where it writes so many lines and then it just stops writing.
Yeah.
We're only making a 1-page
Can you finish the footer, please? Oh, sorry about that. And then it'll finish it out. And then you've got 2 blocks that you got to kind of integrate and push together. But then add that to times a million. So like if you take an ASP site, you may have 1,000 files. You got multiple code files, multiple CSS files, and a lot of things going on. And you think merge conflicts is a problem. Wait till we have session conflicts inside. Well, my ChatGPT said this. What did yours say? You know, and they'll have names for each other. You know, I call mine Frank. Frank said this. You know, well, Alice said this. Like, which one is right? You know,
that's
like
one of the issues we need to solve.
That's
one of the issues we need to solve. We both need to be talking to Frank. That's one of the like having this continuous session amongst multiple users is a thing that doesn't exist yet. But in order for this to work on a bigger project, and there's multiple people working on it, that will have to exist. Otherwise, you're right. Because what'll happen is, you're right. It'll give you, just because you're using GPT-4 or ChatGPT using GPT-4, like it doesn't give the same answer.
No, it doesn't.
Put your question in 10 times, it'll give you 10 answers.
Yeah, I've tried this where I'll like take the prompts and push them out somewhere and then put them back into a new session.
Yep.
And I get different answers. I got a different taco site because we were kind of go redo this again.
Yep.
I got a totally different site. You'd be amazed how different it is. It's like,
I'm sure.
Okay,
yeah,
it changed it.
Yep.
Not
only does it change its design, it changes its approach, it changes its like underlying technology that it uses. Like it's not consistent in that. It doesn't give a consistent answer to a question, because I think the way that it works is, obviously, to an answer to the question, build me a website, there's a million different answers to that. There's a million different ways to do it. Therefore, it gives you one of the ones. It's never incorrect. It just gives you one of the versions of that. Whereas if you asked it a finite question, it should give you a finite answer, right? If it wants to know whether this color is red, it should know yes or no, and it's going to give you this consistent answer. It's when there's more than one answer, it will just doesn't give you the top one, or I don't know how it works in terms of like how it does it.
We see this in Midjourney too, where and they're trying to solve these issues. Like, I want the same character every time I put this prompt in. I want this to look like Kevin Doyle every time, and it doesn't. Like it's so trying to create a comic or a movie or something like that with just Midjourney is a problem. The artist captures Peter Parker and figures out what he looks like, and then it's really consistent across the screen. But imagine watching Into the Spider-Verse in theaters, and every time Miles Morales comes on the screen, it's a different dude. You're like, what am I looking at? Like it's so hard to. It's
getting slightly better at that in the way that you. So this comes back to this. So Bobby and I have been talking about this a lot, but priming the AI is a thing.
Yeah.
So you're going to be able to, you can kind of prime a prompt on Midjourney by feeding it source material, and it's the same kind of thing. So for like a movie, you would feed it like, hey, here's all the 3D renderings of my character or whatever it is. Here's my character from every angle, everything. Right. Now take that information. Now I want that character to be in this particular context, like running through the woods or something. Mm-hmm. And it's getting better at that. But if you just give it the prompt like person running through the woods and let it go, it will come up with a million different responses to that. You could literally ask for 100 and every one will be different.
That's why I think ultimately when you look at where we're going with Midjourney or where we're going with coding, it's going to come right full circle back to where we are today, that there'll be people that know how to use these tools to achieve goals, and they'll be in the same class that we have now, which is developers, artists, and those kind of people will always win with better tools. And it's never gonna. It will elevate a few in a programming that couldn't do it before, but I don't know, man. I think those people that could learn it on their own already had the ability. It's just maybe ChatGPT makes them braver to try, or maybe it's easier to try. But we see this all the time, that people come from walks of life, and if you just took the society view of them and you're like, they can't break into this, and then suddenly they're coding, you're like, what happened? Well, it's because they're predisposed to have this walking around knowledge and think in a way that other people don't. It doesn't matter where they came from or who their ancestors are or anything like that. They're just predisposed to be good at coding, and therefore they become programmers. Just now people are telling them that it's easier to do than what it was. So I do like that aspect of it, where maybe we can remove some barriers down, because it can help you, but I don't think it's ever going to replace a human teacher. Like you can learn on YouTube today, and you can learn with total free tools, and you can do it, and a certain segment of those people, percentage of those people are successful with that, but a lot of them fail because you're just like, if I could just ask a human what the answer to this question is, I can move forward. And so they end up quitting because they don't have a teacher. And I think that eliminating human interactions between other humans is a mistake if you think that I can just talk to a computer all day and get the result. I just don't think that is ever going to happen. So there's things that we don't understand of, like where ideas come from, where there's a guy has an idea, but then he's influenced by other people in a circle to kind of refine that idea, and you see me do this a lot, where I'll say, what do you think about this? Because I'm bouncing ideas off other people to see how they react to it. An AI won't be able to do that. It'll just say, sure, I'll do that.
We've primed it to be our confident, always correct friend. So.
Right. And so what you don't want, especially with you talking about building a business or building a startup, is you got to validate your idea in the marketplace of other humans. You're not selling to AIs, you're selling to humans. So you need to understand, like, what do they think about it? How do they react to it? And those kind of things. And that you won't ever be able to get from an AI. Can we code the app? Maybe in 10 years, maybe. But here's my other thing is, once this becomes easier to do, we infinitely always move to making it more complex, which means that we want to do more complex things now.
Right.
Now that it's easy. So once 100%. Website creation became easy, we started making applications, So I was reading an article the other day, like the Google is really down on WebAssembly. When I mean down, I mean they think it's going to be hot. And they're talking about all the things that they can shove into WebAssembly into the browser. Of course, Bard and AI being one of those things. But like, that wasn't possible 5 years ago to do. And now it is, but it's more complex. You can't get ChatGPT to do that for you at this point because it's research, it's R&D, it's something new. And I think that is where in technology specifically and especially is that as it gets easier to do, we make more and more complex things, and that requires more skill on the other end until we make that simplified again. And then we leapfrog again.
Plus, I think I'm still bullish on this shift to AR too. I still think that's a thing. I know that's kind of like the whole metaverse thing is kind of like dwindled away, but it's still there. It's still in the background. And I think a recent interview with Tim Cook, he started talking again about pushing into AR, and he had some very positive things to say about AR. So they're still looking at it for sure. We still may see that headset this summer. There's still the rumors around that. So I think the AI mixed with that too allows us to make even more things to that, because just like the mobile switch, like it took people a minute to pick up on the mobile technologies to be able to build the mobile apps to do the thing. People kind of wanted them overnight, but there just wasn't the bandwidth there to do it. And now look, everybody has a mobile app. Right. Same thing.
Another thing too, you can go back and look at that mobile shift, and everyone says, "Well, that's the end of websites," and it wasn't. We built them both. We did them both. We built mobile apps and a website. If you look at COBOL has been around, and it's like 4GLs and then event-driven programming and then websites and mobile is supposed to be the death of COBOL. And it's like, it's not. We keep adding on to all these technologies. And so I think that's where AI is going to be it is a platform. I do believe that we're going to be using these tools and we're going to build on AI as a platform to increase what our apps maybe can do. Having a natural language interface is kind of cool in certain use cases. If you can really train it to be a chatbot, which we have now, but now a better one, it could be good. Could it revolutionize IVRs, which is like interactive voice response systems that you hear on the phone when you call the cable company and say, dial 1 for this? You could see an AI platform doing that better, because that it's just a set of rules in an XML document that's going down through. And you end up you immediately go, I want 0 for customer service, because what do you want to do? You want to talk to a human. You don't want to go through all of its limited response.
I'm going to have my IVR call their IVR. That's what I'm going to do. Exactly. Like, hey, IVR, can you book that appointment with that other? And it'll know, because my AI knows what I want it to do. And my AI will call their AI, and they can arrange it between them.
Yeah, so when I call the cable company, reboot your cable router. Tell me when you've done it.
Yeah, I have done it. Exactly. You've already told your AI. If it asks you to reboot your cable modem, tell it you've already done it. Damn it! Of course I've already done that. You idiot. It's the first thing everybody does, because I know that's what you're going to tell me.
The power on. Yes, the power's on.
Yes. It's always something on their end, isn't it? Always. It's never been me yet. Oh, actually, one time it was me. I lie. One time it was me. My cable broke. Like the literal physical cable. Like, who would have thought like that would have been an issue? Because 9 times out of 10, it's always the cable company. And I'm always calling them out. They're like, yeah, something down the road broke. And I'm like, of course it did. So I'm assuming it's the same thing again. No, the cable was busted. I'm like that. Yeah. Whatever. I was wrong once.
The other thing, too, that they consider if you 10x, something I want to bring up, this one point, is you got to understand that output is not linear, which means that if I 10x me as a developer, it doesn't mean I'm going to get 10x more output. There's just limiting factors on those kind of things. So not everything can be 10x. And I think you need to understand that, like, even if we got way more productive, we still may need 10 more people in the IT department because they're doing different functions, different things. And it's just, you don't want to have that. It doesn't scale linearly. There's not a graph here that AI is going to say, okay, boom, you're this much faster now. Can you produce that much more? And it's like, no, I still need vacation. I still need time off. I still have to take the kids to the school. You know, like all the other human things that happen will still be in the way. And I think that we're still going to be developers for and also, finally, not everything that needs to be written has been written yet. And that's the other thing people think, that we're just going to 10x on what's currently built. And there's so many industries out there that aren't even in a system yet.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so like, you know, and that's where, when we talk about end of humanity and humanity ending all the work, and like all the work hasn't been automated. You know, I always laugh, well, AI could beat you at chess. I'm like, yeah, but could that same robot beat me at basketball?
Right.
Well, that's not fair. Of course it is. That's what humans do. The same guy that's a really good chess player could kick your butt in basketball. You know, he could win in a sword fight. That robot would have no chance whatsoever. I mean, so like, so humans are creative animals. They're instinctive and they're adaptable. And then AI has to always be programmed. It's really hard for them to adapt to new situations. So yes, the thing could beat me at chess, but who cares? I could destroy it in Call of Duty. You know, it can't use the controller, you know, that kind of stuff. So like those other things that it can't do that we're not giving it credit for, humans get credit for.
Yep, I am interested to see some of the things that this is doing, and some of the things that will come out of this, because you're right, this productivity kind of boost will push us into an area that will allow us to have new and exciting things.
Yeah,
I'm all down for that. Give us more tech, like make more things.
And what, again, I said this, but content management systems have been around since the 98s. As soon as we made websites, people were making content management systems, and we keep making new ones, and products keep coming out, and they keep improving on that. And it's just, to me, it's a better way to do it. If you want to build an e-commerce store right now, you wouldn't crack open ChatGPT if you didn't know how to code. You went directly to Shopify. Let them figure out how AI can improve it, but you're going to go to that service to build a Shopify store. Now, people are saying that AI search will go into those stores and bring back results, so you don't have to go there. But I think that's going to have to shake out, because eventually the stores are going to go, hey, Bard, you can't use my data. Like, you can't go to the store, present the things for me, and then not pay.
Well, that's one thing we haven't talked about, isn't it? We haven't talked about, even in this whole thing, we haven't talked about walling off data. We haven't talked about regulation. There's a lot of other things that aren't just like that are on the periphery that could also affect this stuff.
Yeah,
we've talked about this
my
before plenty of
theory
times.
is, when we saw Elon Musk take away the API in Twitter, everyone went up in arms, and I was like, that's weird. Why did he do that? You know, I said, maybe it's a cost to run it. But as the weeks have evolved, I think he's walling off the Twitter data and saying, yeah, you want it? It's $42,000. You're like, why did he charge that much? Because he doesn't want OpenAI to come in here and grab all of his data for free. Yep. And then give all that away in a chatbot somewhere else. And he's like, hey, that's my data. You're going to have to pay for it. And I think Stack Overflow has done it. I think Google's going to wall themselves off from Microsoft, and Microsoft's going to wall themselves off from Google. And let's make no respect, the best walled garden on the planet is Apple, and they will defend that territory to the end of time.
They will. Yeah.
You know, everybody's talking about Microsoft being closed. Apple's the closest of the closed systems, you know.
Yeah.
You know, they only
we haven't even seen what they're doing with AI yet.
They are doing something.
They're doing something, we haven't seen it. I think we're going to see it in an iteration that isn't a chatbot. We're going to see it either in Siri.
Something cooler.
We're going to see it in Siri. We're going to see Siri version 2. Or we're going to see it in whatever their AR like devices. That's going to be the first time we're going to see it. They're bypassing this first phase of these large language models. They're going to use them in different ways, I think.
Yeah, and Facebook will be the same way. Facebook will come out with stuff. I'm sure Amazon's working on things. And then there will be companies like OpenAI that will create things. And I think Midjourney is one of those kind of independent companies that just spring up, you know, and suddenly they got this cool thing. And people will leapfrog them, and I think there's lots of opportunities. So the final note is, if you learn how to code, you can take advantage of this shift. I do think it's a shift to the platform, but people that know how to code will be the ones to take advantage of it. You know, just the first OpenAI thing was built, 10, 15 years ago. They've been working on it for a long time. That's because they were technologists and they knew kind of how this kind of worked, and they built a really cool chatbot. I think those types of innovations are coming in the future, and it's up to you to skill yourself up so you can take advantage of that platform shift, or just the massive wave of people that they're going to need to build out new and brand new things. And I think that's where you're going to see more developers working on AI enhanced systems than less.
Definitely. Let's do some questions, shall we?
Okay, cool.
Some comments, questions, whatever. Let's see.
I see him coming in there, so
let's see what we've got. Let's say, Jacob says, is it fair to say the current state of the economy at large is a bigger barrier to landing a role than the existence of AI is?
So, again, what I will say about the economy is this. The economy is the economy. You can't change it. You really can't. We're not in monetary policy here. So what you can do is be the most skilled person that you can be and apply that skill in the marketplace. Up until this point, even in the tech bubble of 2002, that's when I started my first company. We had the downshift in 2008 when we had the mortgage crisis. And now what we see now is this inflation thing. It looks like it's bad, but like in technology is the best place to be. I mean, it is the best place to be. And you have to do something for a living, so you might as well take the most profitable job out there. But if you think, okay, I think blue collar jobs are going to come in a renaissance, I'm going to learn how to weld. Go for it. Welders are already paid pretty well anyway, right, if you like that kind of work. So I don't think that the economy can be a resistance factor, and we could go into depression and we'll get through that. But that shouldn't mean that I think the economy's bad, therefore I'm going to de-skill and just kind of wait it out is a bad move, in my opinion. I think you should upskill in downtime so that you can compete in that marketplace. And it's not necessarily a barrier. There's still plenty of development jobs out there right now, even with the big people firing people. They're not all developers. These are customer service roles, HR roles. There's a lot of roles out there.
There's this weird thing that the economy is bad. The economy is not bad. It's just
still unemployment's fairly low still. So we're not talking about like we have 20% unemployment in the U.S. It's still having around 5 or 6%. Right. And then there's the job participation numbers, which is like how many people are actually trying to find a job. That's kind of low. But, as people get older, they're not going to be looking for jobs. They're retiring. I would say if you're young right now, and I'd say young in your 20s, 30s, and even up into your 40s, skill up as much as you can. I'm not sitting there saying you have to come to Foundry or even you have to learn how to code. What I'm saying is be competitive in the marketplace with the skills you can have. And these AI can help you code things that you couldn't necessarily before, at least give you answers or point you in a direction. But learn and apply your wares in the marketplace. Don't sit on the sideline and wait for it to get better, because by the time it's better, you're way behind. And other people have definitely thrived. COVID is another example. We had 2020 where people sidelined themselves and other people didn't. And,
well, those companies that have made these bank. Like layoffs have they hired massively during that time, massively. Right. So they hired let's say they hired 20,000, they let go of 5. All the news talks about is the 5 they let go of. They netted 15,000 new people in a lot of these cases. Right. It's like the economy wasn't bad; it was great. And it's still, those people are still there. But all you see is the headlines that's like, so-and-so let people go. It's like, because they corrected because they overcorrected before. That's all.
Yeah, that's the natural things. But other companies aren't. They're hiring people. So I think there's lots of opportunity out there for you, Jacob. Just make sure your skills are aligned right with the jobs that you're looking for. And if those things can have a match, you can win in this marketplace. But if the economy goes down, it goes down. That doesn't stop you from still competing in that economy. And if you just have to just invest in you and not worry about the external force, worry about the internal force, which is you. What can I do to make myself more valuable in this economy, wherever you think it is, and then compete there, because those external forces will always be there. The economy goes up and down. It's always like that. There's always a naysayer out there and saying you can't do it. And then I believe you can. So.
Okay, let's see. Thank you for the super chat as well. That's awesome. And massive congratulations. Nice. So I landed my first role a year ago. Thanks to you guys. I'm going for mid-level roles this year. What tips do you have for mid-level interviews?
I mean, they're the same as everything else. Show stuff that you've built, I think helps out a lot. If you're running into, as you get to the interviews, you're running into maybe more coding challenges, practice those, but like if you can talk about the things that you've built, I don't care if you're junior, mid, or senior, that's a way stronger interview than just trying to memorize a bunch of facts about coding. So you may get harder questions or harder challenges to complete. You should be able to do those.
Bree, thank you. Beef burrito tacos today.
Bria.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
I like it.
I could go for that. I'm kind of hungry now, actually.
Yeah, the taco hut is up the street now. It's like I can literally walk to it, so it's kind of great.
The mention of that now made me hungry. Let's see. What's Will saying? Will says, John Oliver was talking about a news story saying jobs would be lost, talking about jobs like attorneys. Thankfully, he had a smart lawyer expert who said it will be a tool that can make some things easier and make us more efficient and competitive. There you go.
So if you're an attorney, okay, and let's say you need an attorney and your attorney is using only AI tools, what I would suggest to you is hire a new attorney because he doesn't know what he's doing. And so like specifically, and I have fantastic legal representation, and I can tell you, I fired 2 firms, and when the third firm that I had, it's a different level. They operate on a whole different level. And there's things about attorneys, especially when it gets combative and you want to go to court and you got to fight, your attorney has to have that fight in them. They have to be creative. They have to like read into certain things. And so, I don't think attorneys will ever be replaced. They're your representative for you. So it's, attorneys are insanely competitive, the good ones, insanely devious and creative. It's just how they are. Yep. That's how they are, and so like whereas an AI could give you the exact answer, but it won't necessarily be creative. And so strategy is part of this, the human conditions part of this, the fear and the other things are part of this. If you've ever been through litigation, that's all plays into it. So saying that 2 AI robots are going to duke it out on the law and then the judge AI is going to like decide, it's just, it's fantasy. It's just not going to happen. And I think a really great human attorney will always beat the AI bot. Could it research all of case law? Well, you can already do that now.
Right. That's
it's not really like they bring anything new to it. I mean, like, you can already do that now. So could it uncover things maybe that you hadn't thought about before? Maybe. But it'll never.
That's why it's the assistant. Yeah, that's why it's the tool that you can use. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Let's go. N17 Hero says, I needed a solution for something today, and ChatGPT gave me a really good base solution, but I still needed to understand RxJS and behavior subject to make sense of it and use its code.
Exactly. In other words, you got to code. Like when I was making my website, I'm thinking I'm coding now. Like this is so overrated for as like. So for me, it was like the realization was like it can't know where between which 2 divs I need to insert this code at. When we teach people how to code, that's the first thing when you're editing HTML. Is like, where does this div start? Where does it end? And then they get nested. It gets kind of crazy. Yeah. And even for experienced people, you can like, oh crap, I'm missing a bracket somewhere. Let me look through there. Even with code editors and formatters, sometimes it doesn't always come to light. And those are very common syntax. And ChatGPT is not going to tell you necessarily how to do that all the time. But even then, you need to understand the topic you're doing so that you can integrate it into the specific solution. And what people are telling me is if you integrate the solution, then you need to turn around and retrain it with what you did with. And it's just like, so I have to code on this side in the site and then also code on the AI prompt side so it can keep up with it. And it just becomes the back and forth is really difficult sometimes. So at this point, and until it vastly improves a lot far, and people told me this, wait till ChatGPT 4 comes out, and I'm using it now. And now everyone's going to tell me, wait till 5 comes out. And I responded to someone on YouTube that's like, well, it already has all of GitHub. What else does it need to know? I mean, like, it already has like millions and millions of lines of code already trained against it. What else does it need to know? Like, so I think it's going to be in the tool category for the foreseeable future. You know.
Yep.
It's
So speaking of that, I like this question. That's a good question. So should a person add ChatGPT to their tool belt or just ignore it for now and keep on trucking with learning?
We're already using Stack Overflow, Google Search. You might as well put it in there. Just don't expect it to write it for you. That's the mistake. The people saying that I created an app in 10 minutes with ChatGPT never show you the app they built. And two, they're not coders. So there's the famous one out there. I gave it $100. It made a business. He stopped the videos because he ain't got a business. That's the problem. It doesn't get all the way to the end goal. But I think if you want to pay for it and you want to use Copilot X inside of Visual Studio or VS Code, it's kind of cool. But you can also use the IntelliSense things and still use Stack Overflow and ask questions to people. I think you're going to use all of the above, but I don't think you should ignore it. No, I think you can use it. But if you find it frustrating like I do, maybe you'll get better at prompting. Maybe I will and get better use out of it. But sometimes I'll probably push it to the side and do a lot of things I already know how to do. And okay, let me just do that. And I'll probably use it for very specific micro cases where, okay, how does that work? Things like that. I do think there's some things that are kind of cool. Generate me an endpoint for this particular API. And that's kind of cool because it could know the syntax, but then if it's wrong, it won't work. And then what do? You end up going to the docs and looking at it anyway. So is it faster? We'll see. Can it get better? Yeah, it needs to get better for it to be useful.
I think it's something ultimately that you might as well start getting used to now, because ultimately it will be the power tool. It's the number one power tool. It'll be like moving from Notepad to an IDE, right? Or moving from Notepad to Visual Studio, right? Or to VS Code or whatever. It's gonna be the same kind of move. If you could still write your stuff in Notepad, great, have at it. You could still do that, but it's not the productivity boost that you're getting from writing it in VS Code. And it's gonna be the same kind of thing. I think embracing it and learning and how to be better at using it is going to be the thing, because lots of other people are going to do that, and if you don't do that, you will get left behind, because they will make better tools and they will learn to use the tools better.
Yeah, but you're still gonna have to code for no matter what you do. Right. Now, I do see it doing things like, hey, generate a unit test for this, and it could generate a unit test for you. That's kind of neat, because people saying, if you listen to Tech Twitter, everyone writes unit tests, and they don't. Trust me, you probably in your shop, you may or may not do it, and it may not have 100% coverage. But now that's something that could be maybe more automated and maybe better for us, because we don't want to do that or take the time to do it. But writing the core functionality of making the widget do what the widget needs to do will always be in the hands of the coder. There
you go. N17 here also says, I think it's a useful tool to help getting things done, but you have to have some knowledge to ask the right questions to get a decent response. You have to have a lot to get decent responses. I think you got to have a lot.
Yeah. I just don't see the sales manager being able to do this, or the CEO with no technical background ever being able to do this. I agree.
Not even being able to ask the right questions, but also even understanding the responses.
I just don't think
it'll speak to you back in jargon that you maybe don't understand, which you can ask clarifying questions. But again, the time it takes to do that, you're then building that knowledge. You could have just read the docs or whatever and had the same amount of knowledge and asked the same questions. That's not the way that it's used. It's just a shortcut.
The CEO may have other things to do, and he just ends up hiring someone anyway. Dude, I don't have time to read all this stuff. Can someone else do this? Yeah, maybe you should hire a developer instead of trying to do it by yourself. But if you want to be a one-man band, it's possible. I just don't think you're going to have to know how to code for the foreseeable future and know a lot about how systems are put together for it to be any use to you. Or just use some no-code tool platforms that are already built, like CMSs, and there's already been app builders out there that build stuff. It's just not the greatest thing in the world.
Yep. So NoFinder says, I learn code as much as possible and have ChatGPT explain things to me that I'm still struggling with, which is great. But you do make a good point here. Maybe double check what it says if you're worried about hallucinations, misinfo.
You absolutely should be worried about it, because it does lie.
It flat out lies. It just lies. It makes up all kinds of stuff in every context. I don't know if I've talked about it on here before, because we haven't been here in a minute, but I've talked about it on Not Null. I've talked about it on the Twitter space we did. But I asked it to write a bio for me. I asked all of the different ones. I asked Bard, Bing, and ChatGPT. Now, Bard and ChatGPT wrote 100% hallucination bio for me.
Right.
It gave me skills that I didn't have. It gave me degrees that I didn't have. One of them told me I wrote a book that I didn't write. Not only did I not write the book, another Kevin Doyle also didn't write the book, because guess what? The book doesn't even exist. Nobody wrote the book. The name of the book was 100% fictitious. Right. So it's not like it didn't know who I was. It just pulled... I don't know where it pulled this book from. I have no idea where it hallucinated this from. But it was just wholly untrue. So you do have to be wary of if you don't understand the question you're asking it in the first place, you shouldn't just take the response as truth. Because we fed it kind of things that we know the answer to, and that's the test for it, right? Give it questions that you know the answer to and see how it responds. Right. And a lot of times, it ultimately gives you fictitious information, which just makes it not as useful as it should be.
Yeah, but I do think ChatGPT can tell you about things. I'm not saying it can. I mean, just like Google can and Stack Overflow can. Yep. And it is kind of cool where you can ask this very specific questions and it give you answers.
That's where it shines.
This is where it shines. Yeah. Yep. It's just the point of where everyone immediately jumped to. It's going to just build the complete system out of whole cloth. It's like, that ain't happening, man. I mean, we got to make some more inventions before that happens. I mean, there's a reason why if you're at a bank and they have 10,000 developers working there, there's a reason. It's not because the bank just wants to pay them so they can sit around and do nothing all day. It's difficult problems and different skill sets and just a lot of different things, and even politics gets involved, I mean, politics will still be there. It doesn't matter if the AI is doing it or not, and they're going to argue over which session was better. I mean, that's what's going to happen.
Right. Oh, here you go. Will was saying something, and I was just saying too. So the goal ChatGPT was trained towards is not to create text that is right, but text that sounds right.
Yeah,
because that's its underlying technology, or that's how it works.
That's
it just
all
predicts
it can
the next
do.
word. That's all it can do. Yeah, and it's seemingly magic, right? Because it gets it right sometimes. So using text that truly is factually correct is usually the easiest way to achieve that. But context is everything. But you're putting your faith in that usually every time you take ChatGPT reply at face value. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Especially in coding. It's with coding, it has to be right. It can't be sort of right. You have to modify.
Because sort of right is wrong.
Yeah, sort of right is wrong. That's all I always say. Well, it mostly works. No, it's broken. That's how I always defined as a dev manager and looking at student stuff. Well, it mostly works. No, it's broke. I mean, you need to fix that. There is no mostly working. It's either works or don't. And it's really one of the frustrating and one of the cool things about coding. You just got to make it work, and you either like to do that or you don't.
Yep. Oh, here you go. This is interesting. Look, I just see this comment. So I read the most recent documentation. They're still quite a long way from figuring out hallucinations. And that's because, again, that's the fundamental technology around how it works. It's a problem that it's baked in to the technology.
Yeah.
It needs another invention to be able to sort that problem out. This is not like they can flick a switch and be like, oh yeah, we're aware that it's making stuff up. We'll just turn that part off.
No, it doesn't. I think so. It's just a predictive engine that says, here's what the next likely word should be based on all the stuff I've seen. I think this word is next. So it can make a sentence that sounds right, but that's why it writes a lot of word salad too. Like when you write blog posts and you start getting in there, and it's like, what is that paragraph? Just delete that. That doesn't make any sense. But it reads like it. So it's a really great lorem ipsum generator for sure. Then that doesn't matter.
You have something that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
At least on some level. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. I like this. I like Patrick's idea. All he wants is an RPG game like Skyrim with generated AI quests, but actual big complex quests, not just kill 20 bandits in a random camp.
I get you. Destiny.
This has to be coming. This has.
No, I think they're working on
it.
Game. So Destiny, Bungie, the game I play, Bungie has tried this. They've made generated of levels that changed every time, but then they were kind of like, it's different, but it's not. So I don't know if they can do that real time in a game. I mean, it's really hard for them to be able to do that. But I guarantee you that game companies have that on their to-do list and say, how could we make a quest that is different for every player to give them engagement so that they'll come back and play our game more and more again.
Guess who's going to be working on that?
I guarantee you Bungie's working on it. Yeah.
More devs. That's who's working on it.
Exactly. It's a problem. You got to code it, so it's a problem. Not go kill 20 bandits. That's the way Destiny is. You go pick up a quest and it's like,
it's the way every
kill 10 of these in this area, and you're like looking around for them, and the common one in Destiny, and not to get into games, like get 20 precision kills, and then it's full of the enemies that don't have precision damage. That's everyone. It's the classic Destiny meme. You tell me to kill 20 things with precision damage, and all you give me is these enemies. It's impossible. I just leave and come back, so hope the quest changes.
That's funny. That's funny. Okay, let's see. N17 Hero says, I know that DALL-E 2 thinks Harrigan and Prince Harry are the same person, so I'm not losing any sleep yet. I will say, so DALL-E 2 sucks. I'm just going to throw it out there. If you DALL-E 2, it does suck as an image generator. Midjourney, though, I'm kind of like, I am loving Midjourney. I'm having a ton of fun with Midjourney. It's very, very good.
Yeah.
The V5 version of it, if you get into the prompting and like you can figure stuff out, it can create some pretty crazy looking things to the point where it's creating photorealistic stuff that is often at a glance indistinguishable from a real photo. It's very, very impressive. It's creating a whole lot of problems because of that, but that's for a whole different discussion.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, it's interesting. Will art diminish or will artists go away? I really don't think so. I think a lot of people enter this space that didn't before, but the truly guys that are great are going to use this to create things that
Midjourney is inspired by those guys.
Yeah,
you can tell it to work with like a create me a painting like Kincaid or whatever, right? You can tell it that. Like, it needs the source to be able to work its magic. Without the source, it's nothing.
But if you think about it, if you're at Marvel or whatever, and you're a storyboard artist, and you're really good at storyboard artists, like the really great ones, you're like, can I use Midjourney to do that? Like, maybe. But the other guy could probably draw it way faster. Like, he's just going to crank the thing out, and then they're going to erase it and talk about it. And like, oh, what about this idea? And he goes, the other guy's in there trying to type in the prompts to keep up with the idea flow. If you've ever sat in one of those rooms, that's why I don't think it will ever replace it. Now, maybe at the end of the day, they could take his thing and create a more photorealistic shot chart or whatever, and it could generate one. But I think the ideas sometimes will come from the artists will just be better at it. They're just quicker. Humans are people just underestimate how much knowledge they're bringing into this stuff. Like, in order to imagine a really great prompt, probably in your brain, you're thinking, oh, this is what that looks like.
Right.
And so, like, you can write the prompt. The other person that has no idea about composition or anything like that, they can't get Midjourney to do anything. They'll say, it sucks. It doesn't do anything I asked it to do.
True. Yeah.
What'd you ask it? I asked it to give me a boy in a field. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Did you give it the lens? Well, what's the lens? What is the lens? I don't understand. What do you mean? I just want a boy in a field. I'm like, you're never going to make this happen.
Because in their mind, they can kind of see the picture, but they can't describe it in a way that the AI can then create.
Right.
It is a skill set.
And they understand that,
Yep.
And then people say in the style of, and then there's a guy that doesn't know the styles of it. Who's Picasso? What are you talking about?
Right.
They have no history. They have no knowledge of the art space.
Exactly.
Just quit doing it, man.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a really good question from Andy here. So can AI read and write, read code and write documentation, for example, API instructions or user manuals?
Maybe.
So this is what we were talking about earlier, Andy. So it kind of can. You can prime an AI with a set of information. So it's basically like, so the current, like, ChatGPT-4 is kind of primed with this data set from the internet, right? It's like this, whatever it scraped from the internet, but you can give it more specific things. So you could technically, you can prime an AI to say, here's a type of character that I want you to be, and you're going to answer as that character. Or you can say, here's this set of rules, and I want you to follow those rules in your responses. So yes, you kind of can. Now, how much it can take in, I'm not sure yet. I haven't played with this. I don't know if you can feed this through an API or whatever. But the theory is, yes, it can.
Let me ask you another question. Here's where you need to go to. Could it write it on a simple API? Maybe. Could it write it on the Salesforce API? No. It's not going to get all that right. It's going to be, someone's going to have to go in and validate all that. It's kind of like, could it write 30 blog articles for my blog? Yes. Are they going to be great and factually accurate? I don't know. Someone needs to go look at that. And so, like, if you're Salesforce and you're like, okay, I've got some technical documentations, I got 100 of them working here, I'm gonna fire them all and I'm gonna turn it over to ChatGPT, would be a colossal mistake at this point. And I think everyone knows that. The only people that are saying that it is possible are the ones that aren't doing it.
Right. The
Salesforce CEO might say, that would be awesome if we could do that. And then the engineering team comes back and says, well, this is how it kind of works. And he goes, oh, we can't do that. No. Our documentation has to be right. So I think I don't think it can do that. Could it write some stuff? Yes, it can generate text for you, and you could give it prompts to say generate stuff based on this, and it might could do something. I still think at the time though, you got to get it out of ChatGPT, get it into a PDF or a knowledge base or whatever, however you're going to do it, and put it in there. And you also need to fact check it and modify it and make sure it's consumable by humans. So
definitely. Let's talk about this real quick then. So Sunny D for the win says, I'm assuming that's what that means.
Sunny D for the win.
I haven't had a Sunny D in years. They still make Sunny D? Is that still a thing?
Fake orange juice. I don't know what Sunny D is.
Is it still
AI
a thing?
generated juice? That's what Sunny D is.
You still buy it?
Let's get a real orange in here.
I don't know. Yeah. it's the AI of orange drinks. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry if that's, I don't mean to offend you. Sorry,
if you love Sunny D,
So here's a similar, they have a similar take on it as I do, being more concerned with the misinformation from this technology being released with no regulations or safeguards in place than replacing jobs. So we've talked about this a bunch on the Not Null podcast. If you guys have not subscribed to that, please go listen to that. Please go check it out. We would really appreciate it. We're joined by Tech Rally on there and Coding After 30. So Paul and Alex are both on there with us. We've been talking about a bunch of AI stuff on there because that's been dominating the news at the minute. But it's more of it's not necessarily dev-focused podcast. It's more tech-focused podcast. We've been talking about a lot of AI. But yeah, that's one thing we've talked about a lot on there is the misinformation from this and how it can proliferate that information. So basically, we're at a point now where every man can kind of create fake news and can create fake imagery. And while we've been able to do this for a while through skilled professionals through Photoshop, it took time and effort and a skilled person to be able to do it. But the person that made that Pope Balenciaga photo, it took them seconds to create that. And it made mainstream news as being like, hey, look at this. And people just like skimmed by it, believing it was true. So yes, it's an issue.
What I think you should do, and this is kind of what I prescribe in life, is like, if you think you're going to be confused by something, and let's just take the most charged one out there. Everyone talks about this, talking about politics. You should already know kind of where you think on certain things, and you should read like multiple sources from both sides of the equation and figure out your own set of things. And then when something comes out, it gives you that influence or inference to say, I don't know about that. Like, let me research that further. So I'm not going to read just the ChatGPT that told me that as the one source. Now, Microsoft would like to be the all-knowing oracle where it is only one app, and ChatGPT is the only app on the internet, and it gives you all your information, all your searches and everything. And I don't think that's going to be the case. So will misinformation come out? Yeah, it already is. If you only get your news from Twitter, you're probably being fed a lot of misinformation. I don't care what your beliefs are or whatever it is. There's already bots out there that are writing things that make you question reality or whatever. So I think that you just need to do your homework on the things that are important to you. Now, some things may not be important to you. Do you care if the 97 Bulls are 72-10? Or do you care if they were 69-1?
Right.
You may not care about that. I do. I was there. I know that they were 72-10 and they're the best basketball team ever. But then the AI could come out and tell me that the Portland Trailblazers were better, and they won that NBA.
There is this weird thing about rewriting history or rewriting. Like, there's a point about like writing history right now where, okay, so let's just take the Pope in the puffer jacket as an example, right? Right now, that picture looks. It's not the best. It's okay. If you start looking at it, it's flawed, right? But if you pass it in periphery, you can be like, it's a passing photo.
Right.
So as that relates to history, like as we just like pass that down and we weren't actually there at the time, we start to question, did he actually wear that jacket? There is a photo. Right. I remember there's a photo on the internet. I remember seeing it at one point, and then somebody says to somebody else, no, I saw the photo. He wore that jacket. And that person then believes it without doing the research.
Right.
We've just introduced this information, this misinformation around what is really a benign thing in this case. It doesn't really matter.
Right. But it can be important.
But it can be important. It can be important. Exactly.
So you're going to have to know what's important to you, and like you're going to have to do your research on multiple sources to check things. I think that we're going to have to fact check ourselves. What's the famous fact checker thing, Kevin? The site that I don't ever go to.
Like Snopes.
Snopes. Okay. A lot of people don't believe Snopes.
Right.
And that just drives Kevin crazy. And it's
does.
like, yeah, but I understand why they don't, because it's a website that says it's right. And then people are like, well, let me check around and let me check my sources. Like, I know, before I believe the Snopes. So I think that's really what we're going to have to do. We'll have to find trusted sources. And maybe out of all of this, a crazy thing is there's a historian that writes things down on pen and paper from here going forward, and everything has to be in a box somewhere in a book.
We're going back to like the 17th
back to
century or
scrolls.
something.
We have a scroll. The town crier tells us what it is. I'm reading it from the exact scroll.
And it has to be proven as fact to make the scroll.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
So I don't know. I mean, like, I think that's just it's going to be a problem, but I don't think we can prove Bigfoot true, because Midjourney can't make Bigfoot. I mean, I've been trying.
I did.
Make Bigfoot.
I will admit, I did try, and I told you why. It's because it doesn't have enough source material. It doesn't know what Bigfoot actually looks like, so therefore it creates a bad version of Bigfoot, because there's only like 2 blurry photos.
AI can't create anything. Come on, man, make me a Bigfoot. So if someone's got a Bigfoot prompt out there, I'm all for it. Just give me one.
Yeah, I've tried.
Maybe I need Sasquatch. Maybe we need to use Sasquatch.
Maybe. But again, there's no decent source material.
What's the other one? Skunk ape. So.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh man, we're gonna eat all kinds of tacos today.
There's
Thank
an extra
you
for them tacos.
Thanks,
Thank you, Quick. Super appreciate it. Yeah. Speaking of, let's hit the road.
Let's do it. Let's go buy them tacos. We got enough to buy tacos.
Thanks for everybody for hanging out. Thanks for watching. Again, if you want an extra dose of us with some other people, you can go listen to us on the Not Null Podcast as well. You can get that in all of your favorite podcast places. We're everywhere. We're in the internets. Yeah, there's also a giveaway right up here.
We're at 96,000. So
what are we at? 96,200. So we're getting there. We're getting there slowly.
Someone's winning a laptop soon. So
get all your friends to subscribe.
Maybe the world will end and humanity, we won't have to give it away, but I got a feeling we're going to be around.
This is the deal. If AI takes over, then AI gets to choose who's winning it. We'll still try and give it away. But maybe it gets to choose.
Skynet will pick it out for us. So, whatever it is, they'll give you a laptop.
Yep, definitely. Yep. It was fun as always. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the super chats from everybody. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the questions. And we'll be back again next week. Maybe from the studio.
Yeah.
Catch you guys later.